All right, y'all, let's hop into Married at First Sight, Season 20, Episode 10. Game on, game over is the title of this episode, and to be honest with you, most of these marriages need to be over. First scene of the episode, we get Adam and Marissa together. We're hoping to see some deep stuff from him. We're hoping that he's going to open up to Marissa, not just give us the funny, playful, goofy, competitive side of himself, but actually be intimate with his wife and get to know her and let her get to know him as well, because I do think that he is a complex human with lots of fears and joys and things that he worries about. That's not exactly what happened. After she opens up about a couple of personal things, this man goes straight into a joke. So, is there anything you want to try sexually? Sir, this is not the time or the place. And this is what Paul was talking about with Adam. He fears intimacy, and you can see it coming through the screen. And you can tell that Marissa is kind of getting bored with this whole let's just have fun and figure it out as we go thing, because she actually stays in this emotionally vulnerable place with him, and she asks him a follow-up question. And it was a good question. It was, what scares you the most about marrying me? And his answer was finances. We've heard him bring this up several times. He wants to retire early. He's saving for retirement. He doesn't want to be living this extravagant life. Now, do I think he should live like a homeless man? No. Does he? Yes. But that's okay. A homeless man with a jet ski, he's happy. And this is what's going to get him to a place where he can retire early. Marissa dives in at that point and she tells him her money story as a kid. And this was the first real conversation I think I've seen them have. And they start to make more sense to me on paper. So I do think the matchmakers tried when it came to Adam and Marissa. He's just a weird one. And Marissa is trying her best as well to kind of meet him where he's at. But he's going to have to open up a little bit more to really make this work with her. And then in true Adam form, he decides to deflect and say, let's stop with the cards and let's play truth or dare. And see, that's why I can't take Adam seriously. And the questions get awkward. You know, the wildest place he's ever hooked up with anyone was on the jet ski, not surprising. But they then asked if you wanted to have a threesome with anyone, who would it be? Yeah, definitely him naming Felipe, weird to me. And I also want to call it out because I've noticed that the black men on this show get no grace. However, you've got this man coming on this show and saying that he would choose one of the males to have a threesome with him and his wife, and that does not get called queer. I think it's interesting, but we're going to move on. Now we have Shawn and Nikki, and these two, they've been a wild card. So they have really high highs and then they have really low lows, and it feels like there's no in between with them. This discussion is going to kind of tell you why, because I was listening to them speak and neither one of them was wrong. But the way that they view relationships is foundationally different. Nikki says that she likes to build from a friendship, and Shawn says that he likes to build from a place of romantic spark and chemistry. Together, this is oil and water. She wants to take her time. She wants to really invest in getting to know him, build something really, really special and pure and platonic. And he's like, no. I'm looking for the physical, baby. That's how I lead. And then we can learn about each other. And those are two different relationship types. And then Shawn said something really interesting to me on this picnic, where he brings up the fact that the only thing that would kind of give him pause with Nikki is if she decided to stay in her head about intimacy. He wants things to kind of flow naturally. That's not Nikki's strength, okay? Nikki is a planner. She is going to analyze and overanalyze, and she's admitted herself that she gets in her head sometimes and she can overthink things. And I think that could be causing her to over-evaluate things. But at the same time, Shawn has to realize that when you have a partner like this, that does mean that they're going to require a little bit more time and energy when it comes to developing that intimacy, and that friendship portion might be really, really important. If you skip that intimacy step with her, she's gonna constantly over-evaluate you, and probably not positively, because she doesn't have a strong enough emotional foundation with you. But Nikki surprises me, and she's willing to concede here and say that she needs to push herself outside of what she would normally do in relationships, since this is an abnormal situation. She's going to try to meet Shawn physically where he is And then Shawn leans over, kisses her. He says thank you, which was kind of awkward to me, but whatever. But I do think in his own way, that was him acknowledging how hard that probably was for her to go back to kissing him. If you guys haven't been paying attention, they really haven't kissed since the honeymoon. She has not been giving any type of physical affection because of how much internal strife they were having in their relationship. So this was a big step for Nikki to even kiss him at the end of that picnic. And I wish the rest of the episode stayed there, but spoiler alert, it does not. It gets worse for Shawn and Nikki. So then we see Tori, she's meeting up with her friends, and all of a sudden religion comes up. And the friends know, oh, my girl Tori, she's religious, baby. She needs her a religious man. Tori, on the other hand, says that she doesn't, and that she doesn't feel the need to condemn him because their principles align at the core. And I really do think it's interesting on a deeper level, because if you found religion to be a deal breaker in the real world, why was it so easy for you to just throw caution to the wind with Felipe and not feel the need to worry about his religious views? And I know we're on this show because we're desperate to find love, but do you just throw away your deal breakers like that? I don't know. What's more concerning to me is that Tori seems to be explaining away Felipe's bad behaviors. So you know that this man cheated in his previous relationships, and you're telling your friends that, oh, he says he won't cheat again, and he felt so bad about it that he didn't tell her. She had to find out on her own. And even they're looking at her sideways, because girl, what are you doing right now? And what are you sacrificing for a man that may turn around and still leave at the end of this 8 weeks? Why are you compromising so much so quickly? And the friends are looking at her the same way we're looking at her. Tori girl, you see what we see. Nick and Courtney, we got to talk about them, but I don't know why they're still here. Courtney's still upset about group therapy. He gives me gifts. He does thoughtful things, but he still wasn't vulnerable. He let me be vulnerable by myself. Girl, are we going to live here? Are we going to live here or move forward? Yes, after she has this huge revelation in group therapy, he turns to her and says, I want you to be more goofy with me. I get it. It's a faux pas. It wasn't as deep as you wanted it to be. But what do you want him to do now? What can he do to make this better? And I'm starting to believe the answer is nothing. I think she wants to be mad. And I really think the real issue is she sees him struggling with emotional vulnerability in a group setting as emotional absence. And they're not the same thing, baby. Maybe in private, you need to do better about making conversation with him, because avoiding him, how is that going to help anything? So here we have this sweet scene. Nick takes Courtney to the restaurant, right? And he has this mafia themed birthday party for her. And y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember anywhere in Married at First Sight history where they have a theme party that the husband has set up for his wife. This is cool. Felipe hosting it at his restaurant, I think that that's also pretty cool for marketing reasons. But Nick comes in excited and smiling. She's being cold and distant. She tells Michelle and Caitlin they can sit on either side of her, and they're like, what about your husband? Courtney said, what about him? He's not going to say anything. It's fine. Girl, that's rude. That's dismissive. That's disrespectful. I felt bad for Nick at that moment, and I thought that he deserved a little bit more grace than he was actually getting. Meanwhile, Belle and Mecca are sitting across the table from Courtney, and they're having a private conversation about how upset they were that the experts called them out during that group therapy session. Mecca is adamant that he is not performative. Belle is just glad that he didn't take it out and project onto her all of his anger. And I really think that they communicate very, very well. I know that Belle knows Mecca is struggling right now with his esteem of self, okay? And that he's not seeing this as just constructive feedback from Paul. He's seeing it as a judgment from somebody he really respects. And I think Belle is emotionally intelligent enough to handle these moments with him where he's internalizing something that's not his to carry. On the other side of the table, where Courtney is, drama is unfolding, okay? We've got Devin. He leans over to tell Courtney at this birthday dinner, hey, you might be being a little cold and distant with Nick. He basically tells her you're shutting him down. Courtney's already on high alert because now she's sitting next to him and she didn't want to sit next to him in the first place. So Devin says, this is a two-way street. Honey, Courtney was not having it. He's not meeting me at this two-way street. Girl, did you even get in the car and leave the house yet? Because I've seen him in the streets. I have not seen you on the block with him. Get in the fight with him, at least. She gets on her phone and starts texting because this ain't what she want to hear. And she's rude enough to just do that in somebody's face. Devin calls her out on it. And he says, "That's rude. You're not looking at me. Look at me." Boy, when he did that, he set her off because she felt like, I hear you and that's enough. But Devin did not care. Devin came ready to give that unsolicited relationship advice, and he was going to give it to Courtney because he probably sees himself in the same dynamic with Caitlyn right now. And Devin, being under the influence, really couldn't understand where she was coming from. And so he gave her exactly what she needed to hear because he wasn't wrong. He tells her that as a man, it's probably hard for Nick to be vulnerable in those group settings. And whether or not you agree with Devin, you can at least admit he was trying really hard to be respectful and advocate for Nick all at the same time. Courtney was really upset because she wasn't asking for an opinion because she had already made up her mind about who Nick was and why he wasn't showing up the way she wanted him to. Courtney made it clear, I don't want to hear this on my birthday. Devin says you need to hit us on your birthday, period, Devin. That is the kind of friend you actually want on your side and in your corner. After that, everything went downhill though. Courtney started cursing at Devin. She yells for Caitlyn to come get her boy, which was a dig at Devin. I don't care what nobody says. She knows that Caitlyn don't like him. Caitlyn do not like that man the same way she don't like Nick. And the thing is, I don't think we're making as big of a deal about this as we would if it was the other way around. If a man started cursing at a woman at that table, we'd be livid. And I also don't hear enough people saying something about the fact that when is it okay for someone to look at your husband and say, can you control your wife? Because no, he can't. Who do you think you're talking to? I'm not his child. And let's be clear, nobody is responsible for controlling their spouse. Your spouse is in control of themselves. Belle Jolie hops in to try to diffuse the moment. Caitlyn comes over and sits next to them and basically chooses Caitlyn's side before she even hears what really happened. And I understand her saying, I'd be stupid to choose a side. But girl, like Devin said, you should at least want to hear my side. I'm your husband. And because she doesn't recognize him as such, I think that's where the disconnect is coming in. He would have stood behind her 100%. She is not choosing him. She is not standing behind him. When Devin and Caitlyn get home, it goes from 0 to 10 with them. It escalates because in Caitlyn's mind, she's being triggered by him being drunk in this moment. He wasn't lashing out at her. She was actually more upset with him because she was triggered. I always remind people, you are in control of your reaction to your triggers. You can be triggered and still choose to be healthy in the way that you communicate with your partner. When she turned to mocking him, this was also something I find extremely childish and immature in the way that she handled that situation. And I will say getting that drunk is also childish and immature. But mocking him when he says, I see you, I hear you, and I don't want to disrespect you, maybe not the best choice. Okay, mocking your partner is not helping anything about the situation. If anything, it makes it more contentious. And when Devin says that you're creating this experience in your head, I will say two people can have completely different realities in the same situation. So was she creating his drunkenness in her head? No. But would I have called him a 5-year-old child? Absolutely not. Because I respect my man. But also, too, I respect my friends. I respect my family. That would never come out of my mouth. Where Caitlyn crossed the line, and it's something that not only stings, but it sits in your subconscious sometimes, is saying, you want me to trust you as the leader of my life? That's never going to happen. And that, for me, would never be erased. That is a soundbite that plays every time you mess up. Because it opens the door for him to view everything through that one statement. Every mess up in the future is going to be viewed as, is my wife going to reject me as a responsible partner because of this? I wouldn't have said it. Next day, get in the car together, love the energy, they repair, apologize, she explains her triggers, and they move forward. Now, the next day, Adam and Marissa, they go to the thrift store, make sure that he looks fly. Marissa sees Adam trying on clothes, and she says, I actually got the ick watching him try those on. Me too, girl. We all do. We all got the ick together. Now we see Belle Jolie and Mecca show up for their therapy session with Paul. They open up with the fact that they felt some type of way. He felt attacked by Paul, saying that he was performative. Paul does apologize. I love that. That is something that you should be big enough to do. And I think it's awesome that somebody seen as an expert or a therapist is seen as apologizing for behavior that was hurtful to their clients. They open up about the fact that Mecca might be avoiding love while Belle Jolie is showing signs of being in love with Mecca. She's just not ready to say it yet. They talk a little bit about Mecca's mom not being around and how that affected him in this therapy session. And they acknowledge that Mecca chooses fear over love sometimes. And I think that's a lot of people in the world. And now we got to get into the conversation about Nikki and Shawn, because baby, that's a whole mess, okay? That is a whole mess. Shawn and Nikki, let's talk about them, because I skipped their scenes intentionally and saved it for the end because I didn't want to separate their conversations the way that the editors cut it up. It's important to note that Shawn and Nikki had a date night before this conversation happens the night before. Shawn comes out of the bathroom in a towel, and he has to tell Nikki right in that moment that whenever they have a good date night, his desire is much higher. He would like to engage in more physical activity than just the kissing. And he suggests mutual self-pleasure. Nikki is very shocked by this request because they have just started kissing again and even opening up the door or the conversation for kissing. And her answer was no, just self-pleasure alone. And he was like, no, I don't do that anymore. The dopamine, I don't watch any adult movies. I don't do those things. This conversation makes sense. This is a normal conversation until she tells him, I'm not there yet and I'm not ready for that. And he says, I understand if you don't want to, but for me, that's part of showing up as a wife. If your husband has a need at some point, you feel that need. And I said, oh, Shawn, no. Because now you've crossed the line from talking about something that you want, and now you make her feel obligated to provide that. And that's the issue I have. Now, if you say this is just something that's important to me and I would love it if we could work to this place, that's totally fair. But what you did was pressuring, because subtly what you're doing is not just asking her if she wants to engage in this activity with you, but you're asking her if she's failing as a wife because she doesn't engage in that activity with you. And the answer is no, she doesn't have to. And Shawn says, okay, done. Okay, then I guess we are done, because we should have been done a while ago. No joke. Like when she said no the first time, we should have been done. But okay. I think he's still missing the bigger picture that she's looking for emotional safety to unlock the physical side of things with him. And in his mind, the physical comes before we get to the emotional. Even though Shawn said, okay, done, Nikki didn't forget. Because later that night, they do an intimacy date. And it's called You Ain't Got No Sense. And it's a play on words for her being blindfolded. They're playing with taste and touch. It was one of those dates that is set up by the experts to kind of push intimacy forward, which honestly, I think Nikki should have led that initiative. I think it's important to distinguish the fact that she never said she wasn't open to any kind of sexual activity with Shawn. She just wants to keep it light and playful and fun. And she doesn't want this desire of his to lead to her feeling pressured into anything else. So this activity was fine, but that conversation sat in Nikki's spirit all day long. After they have their intimacy date, she brings up that conversation and she says to Shawn, you made me uncomfortable when you said it was my wifely duty to perform acts with you. And this is where Shawn loses me again. Instead of Shawn saying, yeah, I did say something like that and I shouldn't have, so let me apologize, and I was just frustrated in the moment, he goes to make it seem like she heard something else or made it up in her mind. That's exactly what you said. And I do think people forget about the cameras in the ceiling sometimes. We can see you. We can hear you. Okay? We're not missing any of this as the audience. And it does you no favors not to admit when you're wrong. He goes on to say, I'm not thirsty. I'm not disrespectful. And Nikki never said any of that. All she said was a specific thing you said made her uncomfortable, but it made him defensive because I think he understands that those are not the values that he should hold at this big age to try to get a woman to sleep with him. And it made him uncomfortable to hear it back. But that's also a bigger conversation about how we really were trained to view marriage, whether that was through our parents, grandparents, friends, wherever we get our marital scripts from. Sometimes they've got some not so positive things baked into them. And then to go into his confessional and say, I feel like she's creating a moment and I'm not sweating you. Actually, you were sweating her, literally. It's just to let you know. And I do feel like both of them now are getting to the point where they're a little bit frustrated. And I get why, because Nikki is saying, I need more time. And Shawn's like, how much more time do you really need to figure out if you are going to be romantically attracted to me? And his way of expressing that is saying, get out of your head. And actually, that's not helpful, Shawn. Like, just so you're aware, that is not helpful. Drop down in the comments. Let me know how you guys felt about episode 10, and we'll be back for episode 11. Just an update. Shawn did post an apology to everyone who he triggered through his actions as well as to his wife. And he says that he's dedicated to moving forward and changing his behavior. You guys let me know what you think of this apology